All right, everybody. We are here today for a special interview with a person that is making a new football game that will be released on Steam, and it will be, I believe, for the PC. And I am here today with Danny Jugan, president and lead developer of Axis Games. Danny, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing very well. So I think why don't we go ahead and get started with a little bit of background, maybe about your history with Axis Games, maybe how you got into coding. If you want to touch on that, you can, and really what your role is with developing Axis Football 2015.
Absolutely. Well, Axis Games was originally founded back in 2007. I had started making games in high school. It was just one of the things that I wanted to learn how to do. And so I grabbed a couple books at the time and just started making Flash games. And then continued that into the college and 2007 actually founded the company. It's where we started doing. We really initially focused on Flash games. Just in the past 3 or 4 years, we've switched over to doing PC games on Unity.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've played around with Unity a little bit myself. I'm no game developer by any means. I'm more of a web developer by tradition or trade. But I know that those tools are very powerful. Unreal Engine as well is one of the other ones that are out there that I think there's a lot of capabilities that you can work with. So you started the company in 2007. So I mean, what maybe you can kind of go through the history of what you've done. I know you mentioned some Flash games, but as far as Access Football goes, do you want to kind of talk through how that came to be and what your goals are with this new game?
Absolutely. So let's see. I made back in 2000, I want to say 5, I made a really, really bad flag football game. It was 7-on-7 and it was just bad. I've always had an interest in creating football games because I felt like if you wanted to play football games, your choices were really Madden, and that's about it. There's a lot of great games that were made back in the day, but they kind of died off one at a time to Madden. And so I
Hmm.
started just, dabbling around in Flash, making my attempts at football games. And I got better over the years with coding and design. And I made the original Axis Football in 2010, which was a Flash-based 2D version. Um, and over the years, there weren't any really decent online football games that you could play for the PC. And so I continued, I guess in 2014 is when we started the Unity version of Axis Football. And the idea was to really give players an alternative to Madden. We knew that we couldn't compete with their graphics or their team of 500 people or however many people are working on the game. And so what we tried to do is give players something that was a little bit different. And so our angle was to make it specifically for the PC. Madden is a great game, but it's limited in certain regards due to the fact that it's on a console. And you've got the controller in your hands, and there's just certain things that you can't do with a controller. And so we wanted to take advantage of the fact that if you're playing on a PC, you've got a mouse and a keyboard, which gives us a lot to work with. And so one of the main features of Axis Football is the idea of this mouse-aimed passing system. And so, you want to throw a pass to somebody in Madden, there's a button over his head, and you hit the corresponding button on your controller to throw him the pass. And, Madden's AI is really good, but the ball is going to go where it's going to go. And you as a player don't really have a whole lot of control over that. And so with this mouse-aimed passing system that we have in Axis Football, you're actually going to see a cursor or a circle on the football field when you drop back for a pass. And you can specify where on the field you want to throw the ball to the receiver. And it adds a ton of control. You can run certain plays that you can't do in Madden. You can throw receivers open. If you got a receiver and he's running a certain route and you want him to break it off early, you can throw the ball kind of where you want him to run and he'll automatically adjust. So it's a great alternative to what people are used to. Kind of the same system every year with Madden. It offers a little bit of a different gameplay, and players seem to really enjoy it.
That sounds very interesting. I mean, I can tell you for one that that sounds like something that I think a lot of people would enjoy, because the challenge of throwing a football in any traditional football game that we play, whether it be on a console or PC, always seems to be very basic and simple. I mean, you throw the ball and the guy catches it in some fashion, and it's really out of your control in terms of those connections that you're making, and the accuracy of how you're throwing it, and it's more usually based. I mean, all pro football I think does it the best, where depending on the quarterback stance and how they're moving in what direction, you get penalized or rewarded depending on where you are when you throw the ball. But that's more of a quarterback thing. But I think with what you're doing, and it reminds me a little bit about the Microsoft game back in, what was it, '03, the NFL Fever 2004 game, and I'm not sure how much different it is. I mean, you're on a PC, you're using a mouse, and but on the actual Xbox original, I know that they had a feature that was very very similar, and I really 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 like that. And that's something that I know that no other company has dared to do. So it's definitely a nice addition, and I think that's maybe something that's going to set you guys apart from the little competition that we really have today. So interesting. So why don't we go ahead and jump into, like, what really is access football? I mean, are you I know you're on a PC, but are there traditional game modes where you're playing a season or franchise? Is there some sort of my career mode possibly? Are there any online modes? I mean, how would a typical player who is used to playing something like Madden, how would that type of behavior translate into how you play Access Football 2015?
Sure. So we have a couple different game modes. The first is just a quick match. So if you want to hop in and play a quick match, you pick your team, you pick your opponent, and you go in. We've got four different difficulty levels, ranging anywhere from really easy to something that's really challenging. Um, excuse me. We also have full season mode. So we've got a 12-week season, and if you are in one of the top 8 teams, you make the playoffs. We've got a 3-round playoffs, and then an Axis Bowl, which we call the championship game. And that's what most people are going to do. What we plan on adding in the future is franchise mode. That's something that we've gotten consistent feedback on that players would like to see. And so that's something we're looking at adding for the 2016 edition, complete with a draft at the end of the year, create your own player feature. That's our goal. And we've also added in the 2015 edition this year, local 2-player multiplayer. And so,
Cool.
despite the fact that we specifically designed this game to use the keyboard and mouse, players over and over since the game was greenlit on Steam have said we'd really like to use a controller. And so we've added controller support, and you move your player with the left stick. If you're looking at a Xbox 360 controller, you'll move your player with the left stick, and then you actually move the pass circle that I mentioned that you normally control with the mouse. You'll move that with the right stick. So you'll get some different action that way, and you still get to take advantage of the mouse aimed passing system. But for players that want to use a controller, or players that want to play with their friend locally, we got that feature in.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because controllers are what we're used to. I mean, a lot of people would have to try to learn to use a mouse. But I in particular do play PC games, and especially with first-person shooters or RTS games. I mean, the mouse, the advantages that you get from using a mouse versus using a controller are almost infinite. I mean, so I would be willing to try, if I was anybody out there, your mouse mechanic first. And if they really would like to stick to a controller, you have that option as well. Does that sound about right? I mean, do you think that the mouse option is the better of the two to play?
Absolutely. And what we even have done is on the splash screen, when you load up the game, it says mouse and keyboard highly recommended. It's something that if you've played a first-person shooter on a console and you've played the same first-person shooter with a mouse and keyboard, there's no comparison. The amount of control and accuracy that you have with a mouse, you can't touch with a controller. But at the same time, we want to make the game what the players want to have. And so if they just want to use a controller, we've got that in there for them. We even put a sensitivity adjustment in the game for the controller. So if they want to have it more or less sensitive, we try to make it as user friendly as possible, but at the same time letting them know that it works best when you use a mouse and keyboard.
Cool, cool. So you kind of guide people to the right direction. I like that. And like I said, I'm willing to try it, and I think it is the better of the two from what I've seen so far of the gameplay. So I'm looking at your screen at one of the screens right now you have on Steam, and it shows a list of all of the opponents. And so basically, it looks like you have every NFL team city on here. Is that about right?
Yeah, so we wanted to give players that are really, fans of the NFL or whatever, we wanted to give them a sense that they could still pick their team. But obviously, we don't have even the slightest chance of getting an NFL Player Association license, and so we had to change it up a little bit. And we trying to get some clever takes on the names, but all of the 32 teams in the NFL are represented in Access Football. So if you're a big fan of the Patriots or the Steelers, you've got a Pittsburgh and a New England team in there with similar colors, but obviously a different name.
I like that. I like that idea. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and I see the Bisons there, and they look nice. So it looks like you guys have a lot of different features. I know you're talking about franchise mode and being able to hold a draft as a 2016 goal. But with what you have here with the graphics, with which I want to get into the graphics a little bit later, but with the icons you have, the team logos, pardon me, and all the different things that go into making a game. I've dabbled in it a little bit, and I can very quickly see how much effort and resources it really takes to develop any game, whether it be a simple 2D side scroller all the way up to something like a AAA product like a Madden. So, can you share the size of your development team, the basically the resources that you guys have, and what you plan to have in the future? Are you looking to grow? Are you guys comfortable where you are? Can you just talk a little bit about your current structure and how much work really goes into making this type of game?
Sure. So um, when I first started making Axis Football for Unity, so the 3D version that we're looking at here, it was just me. Um, I outsourced some of the graphical work. I'm not an artist, and so I had some help there, but all of the design, coding, and implementation I did myself. We've since grabbed some part-time design and development help that we're using for our next project. But all of the work that was done on Axis Football was unfortunately all done by me. And I mentioned before that we had a Kickstarter for the 2014 version that was unsuccessful. And so we didn't raise the funds that I would have liked to have. And so we had to cut some corners. The graphics, the in-game graphics, in my opinion, they're good, but they're not as good as they could be. And I think they're good enough to carry the game for what it is now. But really, what our goal is for this is to raise some decent funds so that we can reinvest it back into the franchise and kick the game up a couple notches in terms of graphics.
Okay. So I didn't realize that. So you guys tried to do a Kickstarter campaign and it didn't go as well as you had hoped. Why do you think that was the case? I mean, do you have any insight as to? I mean, is it a matter of publicity, making sure that you guys are like nobody knows who you are, or is it more down the line of people may not really want to buy into what you're shooting for, or is there some miscommunication going on? Because as you know, with the Joe Montana news that we've had, I'm sure you're aware of that game, and if you're not, let me know. But they've had a huge outpour of attention, and yes, they have Joe Montana. Yes, they're trying to do a AAA product. Yes, if you look at the the videos and the screenshots that they've had, they definitely are pursuing more towards what looked like to be a AAA, console version, and then the news came out about it being mobile. So, um, I guess my question is, do you have any thoughts on why the Kickstarter didn't work? Do you plan on trying something like that again? You mentioned, I think. So, what do you think you learned, and why do you think it failed the first time or didn't go as well as you liked? And what do you plan to do in the future?
So yeah, I did a lot of research afterwards about why it failed, and it was, just completely my fault. It was a learning experience. Basically, what happened was, Axis Games for a long time was really big in the Flash game market. We put out a lot of really popular Flash games, but when we made the transition to PC, we were relatively unknown. And even now, when we're talking and people are discovering the game on Steam, they're like, "Who is Axis Games?" Because even though we've been around a while, we've been in the Flash market, and it's kind of separate. And so publicity was a huge issue. The people that did know about us weren't really interested in PC games. But the main reason it failed, in my opinion, was I didn't have enough to show people at the beginning. And I think the football game fans were used to seeing a lot of promises as far as what to expect with football games that could potentially compete against Madden. And I had basically screenshots of very early models. I had no videos. I had nothing to show people about this is what the game could be, or this is what it might look like. This is my plan for the franchise. And so people didn't really know what they would be investing in a Kickstarter. So to sum it up, I didn't have enough publicity and I did it way too early.
Yeah, I think a lot of people out there who try to do Kickstarters, and I'm by no means an expert, but anyone that's trying to pursue that type of funding, there are definitely lessons to be learned, I'm sure. And if you're going out there and saying, "Hey, I want to make a great football game because I'm sick and tired of only having one option," but I really have nothing to show you, and
Right.
I just have a dream and a lot of energy. Give me money, and they're going to be like, "Okay, no, thank you, I'll pass." So I think with what you've built here, this foundation, that it sounds like you've done a lot of most of the work yourself, which is pretty commendable. I've been building roster modding software for like Backbreaker Football, All Pro Football, and ESPN 2K4 to try to bring life into those games. And I know the amount of work it takes, especially when you're juggling, family and other responsibilities. So for you to be taking a lot of this on your own shoulders is very commendable in my opinion. And I'm not just saying that. I know it. I deal with it. I know you have long nights. You probably don't get any sleep at times. Your family, if I'm not sure if you're married or have kids, but I'm sure they hate you at times. But so you're pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into this project, and and when you have that kind of passion for a game, and you can show the gamers out there a product like you seem to have at this point, I think you're right. I think if you go a second round, you may be surprised with what you get, and maybe you'll get the funding that you need.
Well, that's the plan. Like I said, we hope that we can generate some decent sales on Steam this go round, and then we're looking at doing a Kickstarter if need be to raise anything else that we might need so that we can really add some improvements for 2016.
Cool. So what does it take? And this is my last non-game, in-game question. Like, what does it actually take for people out there that are trying to develop on Unity? What kind of things do you have to do to get approved by Steam to do an early access, or to even put your product on the Steam website?
So the green light process is a little bit of a mystery, even for people that have gone through it. So Steam gives you some general guidelines regarding the number of yes votes that you need. So, for those who might not be familiar with Greenlight, you put your game on it, and it can either be finished or not. You put some media, videos, screenshots, that sort of thing, and users will log in and say yes or no, like yes, I would buy this, or no, this isn't something I'm interested in. And Steam uses that data and they basically rank all the games on Greenlight. And they tell you that you want to be within the top 100 games on Greenlight. And they even give you metrics for saying you're this close, you need to have the game up this longer, and that sort of thing. Um, but when they release batches, when they say we're going to greenlight these 50 games, it's not necessarily the 50 that are in the top. And so there's a little bit of, I wouldn't call it luck, but basically what developers need to do is they need to get the word out there. And one thing that I've learned um, is having an audience before you try and do something is a huge help. So before you want to put your game up on Greenlight, before you want to start telling people about it, you need to go ahead and try to get your fan base built. That would be my advice. That's something that we've learned over the past few years, that having somebody to share your information with and reach out to kind of a loyal fan base is huge.
Interesting. So it's kind of like I think of it like SEO with Google. There's a mystery there. You put your best effort in and you kind of see how things fall, and maybe you're in or maybe you're not. But it is good to know, I think, for people out there who are listening that would like to get into making games and being put on Steam, uh, to kind of hear that your thoughts on that. So I think it's appreciated. When you say Unity, are you doing C++ at all with this, or any kind of coding beyond what Unity has, or is it strictly using Unity? And I'm not an expert, but I've played around. I've created some environments in Unity. I've used the first person, third person, I think it was, or even first person camera to kind of go around, and I made some very simple projects on Unity. So, how deep did you have to go with this game in terms of coding?
Well, the coding is actually um, rather intensive. Everything is coded in C sharp, which is one of you have three language choices with Unity. It's kind of the general consensus that C sharp is the best. As far as the coding itself, the AI is what is most complicated. I'm actually trying to wrap up my PhD in computer science, and my thesis or dissertation is on artificial intelligence in games. And so
Wow.
I'm using a lot of what I do in Access Football as some of the papers that I'm publishing for that. So it does get a little bit complicated, but this is one of the big passions that I have. And so I don't mind really delving into there, because if I'm expecting people to play this game and enjoy it, the AI has to be on par. If I'm not offering them online multiplayer where they can just say, find me someone to play with, I have to, or at least I feel like I need to bring really intelligent AI into the picture.
Yes, I mean, I'm surprised you said C sharp, because that's what I use for web development, and that's very interesting because I really enjoy C sharp. When I look at C++, my eyes start to fold backwards. I mean, but I know what you're saying about AI, and so interesting. So it's maybe people out there can gain some more respect from you. I mean, you're getting your PhD in I think you said artificial intelligence, and so that's great. I mean, that's awesome. So, all right, enough about the background things, and what it takes to build games for all you home developers that want to just jump in. Let's go ahead and dive into the game modes. I mean, we talked about, you said there's a season and
Mhm.
you can play a championship. So how does that work? I mean, do you get to customize your league at all? Is a league set with all 32 teams, and you get dropped into static divisions? Do you have any flexibility there, or is it pretty linear where you basically follow the trail that you've laid and you just try to do your best to compete against the computer?
So yeah, our season mode is relatively linear. So you're going to pick one of the 32 teams, and there's actually no divisions. We have divisions laid out for the 2016 version, but right now everyone's lumped into one division. And so, like if you look at one of the screenshots, you'll see a season mode, kind of a screenshot of kind of the season home menu, and you see all 32 teams listed there and their records. And
Hmm.
so the top 8 teams after the 12 weeks will make the playoffs. One of the things we did change from 2014 to this year's version is we added randomized season schedules. So if you really like playing with the Buffalo Bills for whatever reason, um, if you played season after season, you'd play the same teams every week. So week 3, you would always play whoever. And so fans were like, I really like playing with this team, but I get tired of playing the same teams every season. So we added randomized team schedules so you can stick with your team and play it each season, and it'll be completely different. And like I said, the top 8 teams will make the playoffs, and the all the other games that week will obviously be simulated. And the games are simulated based off of the individual teams' rankings. So, for example, um, the Denver Stallions have a really high rating, so does Seattle. And so if they play teams, they're going to be more likely to win. So what ends up happening is you get into kind of an expectation of who to see in like that top 8 team. And even when you make to the playoffs, you're not just going to have random teams there. So there's a lot of intentionality built into the simulation aspect of games that you aren't necessarily playing.
Okay. So what about the customiz like the player names? I mean, can you customize the rosters at all and try to make them your own, or are those also basically set in stone in the 2015 version?
Those are set. In fact, we ran to kind of thank players who played the 2014 edition. We ran a little contest that said, if you can win the Axis Bowl on the Hall of Fame difficulty, send me an email with what you want your player name to be, what team, what position. And so we've probably got a couple hundred players who have their custom names in the 2015 edition of the game. But the rosters themselves are set in stone for this version. Again, like I mentioned with the franchise mode, that's something that we're looking at changing so that people can put in their name, put in their friends' names, create players, draft new players, that sort of thing.
Okay. And that basically, it sounds like most of everything seems to be static in terms of the customizations of the teams. I mean, is that the case with like the uniforms as well? I mean, all the colors and everything stick. You can't change any of that at this point, correct?
That is correct. Each team has
Okay.
2 different uniforms, but actually the way I've implemented uniforms, adding customized stuff would be relatively easy. So that's again something that we're looking at next year.
Awesome. Yeah, you have to start somewhere, and so yeah, I mean, I'm personally looking forward to this game. I have not heard a lot of it about it, but it is starting to trend in the sim community, and looking at it right now, I definitely think it's going to be something that a lot of people should try to pick up. But so you mentioned about the graphics. Right now you have something that's a vehicle to push your product, and it's not the best, it's not the worst, but it's something that we can actually use to enjoy the game. And so what are your plans if you were to get the funding, or if things were to line up, all the stars were to align for you? What kind of graphics can this game take on in terms of the competition? Is it going to be comparable to what you see on like the PS4 and the Xbox One? Is it going to be better, worse? Maybe you can give us some information about what you see in the future when it comes to graphics.
Well, Unity just released their, well, I guess a few months ago, just released Unity 5. And if you look at some of the demos and the quality of work that they're putting out, it's really top notch. And that is really our limiting factor, like what the Unity engine can handle. And it's pretty high up there. And so, if you look at screenshots or you look at videos of the game, um, the models that we're using, you can obviously tell they're football players, but the level of detail on them is really low. And so if we can get some additional funding, that's one of the first things we'd like to upgrade. Just small visual effects, even stuff like adding, football equipment on the sideline or putting a coach on the field or that sort of thing. We just didn't have the money to do that. Even the player models themselves, adding stuff like normal maps to them so that they've got some depth to their uniform and it's not just a flat texture. Um, would really like to amp up that. Also, little improvements like when a lineman blocks somebody else, they get kind of engaged in a block and they just kind of stand there. Would love to be able to do some custom animations where their feet are moving or that sort of thing, but we were essentially limited to purchasing animations that existed already. And we were kind of hacking some animations together because we didn't have what we needed and we didn't have the money to go out and say, hey, can we rent this motion capture studio or can you guys create some custom animation for us? Because we were working with a budget that was, sad to say, like $500 for the whole game. Um,
Wow.
and
Wow.
and so if you would laugh at
Hmm.
some of the kind of jerry-rig things that I did to make this stuff work, but it works, and you know, we'd love to be able to do it the right way and make it look great in the future.
Interesting. I think people are going to be surprised with the amount of money spent. So you've definitely put a lot of your time, like you said, and I've seen the video. I know you're talking. I think you shared on Facebook that you will be putting out a new video. You mentioned that you've upgraded your running animation. So let's talk a little bit about the animations. I mean, how many animations do you think roughly you have? Is that like a number that you would be able to somewhat give us an idea, or is there, or however you want to explain it, so we can get a better sense of how does a gameplay look? I mean, are guys walking around at a 90-degree angle and they just get hit and fall straight, down, or do they actually, crumble to the floor? Gang tackling, I know is probably nothing that you do, maybe, but how's the O line and D line interactions? I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about the animations, even if you don't have it where you want it now. Give players maybe the idea or an idea of what to expect if they go out and they purchase this year's game.
So it's maybe not as bad as I, originally made it out. We've got probably 50 or 60 animations in the game. So if you get tackled, there's, I think one, two, three, four different ways that you can get tackled. So it's not like you're going to fall the same way no matter how you get hit. You can fall left, fall right, fall forward, fall back, depending on, where you were hit from. Um, the O-line, D-line interaction, there's not much there. Again, one of the things we'd love to add is stuff like swim moves or juke moves or anything that the lineman can do, just to add a little bit of realism. But there's several different catch type animations. Um, the running animations. Um, kind of a funny story with this. So we got a lot of feedback about the running animation with the way the player was holding the ball. And it was one of those situations where if we could find a running animation that we could afford where they're holding the ball, we would just be all over it. And it would be simple as saying, okay, play this animation instead of the one we're doing, but we didn't. And so we happened to have an animation where a player was running holding a rifle, and that was the closest thing that we could get to kind of the arm position that you would use holding a ball. And so what I did was we created an avatar mask that said only show the right bicep and the right forearm and overlay it onto the normal run animation. And so that's how we created the new animation for running and holding the ball. So that kind of stuff we had to do just because we didn't have the budget to do it the right way. And so um, that's one of the things that we're really hoping that we can do right.
Interesting. So it sounds like you guys have the ability to take things that are out there and chop them up, like you said, jerry rig them to look and feel more like the play that we're used to seeing. So cool, yeah. I mean, I see the running animation with the ball now. They're sticking it out like they're doing the Heisman. I know that I saw the screenshot that you had with the new animation, and it looks a lot better. One of the things that I'm hearing from people out there in the community is that you seem to be very in tune and receptive towards the community's support and their feedback, and that makes sense. But developers nowadays, the wall's definitely coming down in terms of the barrier between the gamer and the developers out there, and but there's something to be said about actually being able to take feedback and do something with it. A lot of companies will say, "Oh yeah, we're part of the community," but these are like aircraft carrier type companies that move at the speed of a snail, and they're not as dynamic. Yes, they have resources, but to apply those resources, they're not going to be, in my opinion, as competitive as somebody like in your situation. I think you may not have all the resources, but you can take things and figure out a way to make it work in a very quick amount of time, I would imagine, depending on the task. So you're much more nimble. Just like any other small company, you have a lot less red tape to go through in order to make changes. So, you know, what are your thoughts on the community's involvement, and how do you plan on I guess receiving changes that people really want and applying them to your game?
Well, I try to be very practical with the situation. As you mentioned, there's no way I can compete with the kind of game that these AAA companies are putting out with Madden and, Joe Montana football. And so my only hope is to really connect with the community and show them that with a little bit of support, I can give them the kind of game that they want. I also know that this window of opportunity that I have on Steam, where there are really no other PC games for football, is a small window. And so what I'm trying to do is get as much into the game that the community wants. And I truly do care about what they want in a football game. And hopefully those that played the 2014 edition or at least knew about it will see the changes and the features added in 2015, and even in the short period of time where it was on green light and players were requesting that I add certain features, and I got them in before the release date. Hopefully they see that those are my intentions, that I'm really trying to look out for them, because without the community, I don't stand a chance in making anything more than what I've got here.
Cool. So, all right. So let's talk about the mouse control. Can you just kind of go through that for us, and how the passing works, and I mean even the running. I mean, how do you run without a controller? You just use the keyboard to move your guy around. Do you use your mouse? And maybe discuss how the passing mechanics work.
Sure. So you've got two options when you're controlling the player. You can use ASDW, which is kind of the standard movement for keyboard, or you can use the arrow keys. Either is fine. And then the mouse is used for selecting your plays, interacting with menus, and also passing. So let's say you select a passing play. You can either click or hit spacebar to snap the ball, and you drop back for a pass. And as soon as you drop back for a pass, you're going to see a circle on the field, and it's semi-transparent, so you can still see the field behind it. But it's a flat circle that lays on the field itself, and you move it around with the mouse. Now, depending on some various factors, the size of the circle is going to change. And at any point in time when you decide you want to pass, the ball is going to land at a random point inside of that circle. So that's kind of your accuracy.
Mm.
and the size of the circle changes based on a few things. So if your quarterback is moving, so if you're trying to throw the ball while you're running, the size of the circle is going to increase. If the circle is across your body, so let's say you are a right-handed quarterback and you're trying to throw really far left while you're looking right, the size of the circle is going to be larger. And the circle tweens from positions. So let's say you're standing on the 15 or the 50-yard line and you happen to be angled towards the right pylon 50 yards away. And as you take your cursor and you slide it left across the field, it's going to get slightly larger because now you're throwing across your body. Whereas if you take and move the quarterback, it's not going to be, you're not going to get the increase. Also, as you go a little bit farther down the field, the farther away from the quarterback you are trying to throw the ball, the circle gets slightly bigger as well. And so our goal there was to add some elements of realism in terms of actually throw in the pass in the quarterback mechanics. So if you're on the run trying to throw across your body way down the field, it's going to be really inaccurate. Um, but if you're got your feet planted, you're using good quarterback mechanics, you're throwing straight down the field or in an area that is relatively easy to throw the ball, the circle is going to be small and it's going to go exactly where you're aimed.
Very nice. I like that idea. I'm watching the trailer now that you have on Steam, and I am noticing what you're saying about the accuracy getting larger and smaller. So I do think that that's very close to what simulation football really brings. I mean, if you're running the opposite direction and you're throwing the ball, if you're running to the right and you throw it left, you should not be very accurate unless you're somebody. I don't even know who would be somebody that can do that nowadays. But that's something that I think is kind of cool because it differentiates between people that have a very high accuracy, like a Tom Brady, versus somebody who's all over the place. And that's interesting. So what about, like, do you have like stiff arm moves that you can do, or can you do spins or hurdles or dive animations when you're running the ball?
No, and that's actually one of the features that we're looking at adding this year. So once the game releases, we're going to continue to work on it. And we plan on adding a free update about a month after the game releases. So sometimes in August or September, we're looking at adding a free update to the game. And one of the things we're looking at doing are spin moves and kind of juke or stiff arms. We are again limited by the animations that we have, and we found a couple. We just don't have the money to purchase them right now and implement them into the game. So we're hoping that some of the initial sales will fuel those asset purchases.
Cool. Yeah, I know that there's a marketplace out there for things that you can purchase, whether it be 3D models, skins, if that's even what you call them, meshes, textures. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can buy. Some are very pricey and cheaper to do yourself, and so yeah, there's I'm sure a mixture of resources that take place in terms of what you can purchase. So that's good to hear though, because if you're going to be adding that in, I think that's a very crucial element if you're looking for gameplay mechanics. Because when I first saw this game, to be honest with you, I thought it was more like an out of the park baseball where you're a football manager where you're just managing the league and your team and your players and your roster. But this looks like it's kind of a, I don't know, I don't even know if I want to say it's a hybrid. I'm not sure how deep you go into the stats and the season, and maybe you can shed some light on that part. But it sounds like you have gameplay and you have very creative mechanics when it comes to passing. That's something that no other game really has done in the past. So that's something that's fresh and new, and I think people will enjoy that. So it's kind of like maybe you can share with us, what is it? Is it more about the gameplay, or is it more on the side of managing this team and trying to get your team through the season from a statistical standpoint?
This installment is all about the gameplay. We do keep track of single game stats. So at any point in time, you can pull up your player stats, your game stats to see, how many rushing yards does this running back have? What's your quarterback rating? What's your accuracy? It'll even keep track of things like how many user sacks you have or user interceptions. And that so we go in depth with the stats in the game because we felt like players like to just keep track of that sort of thing. But as far as once you're out of the game and you're kind of in between games, we don't have anything implemented this installment for managing the team. One of the things we're looking at doing in the franchise mode is adding some elements of that in there to where and kind of what we've discussed internally was adding like practice features where it's not necessarily where you are actually going through the practices, but you can kind of choose, would like to improve on receivers or quarterbacks or running backs or safeties. And so you'll get kind of a temporary or even permanent boost to those players' stats because we've got individual player stats for every player in the game. From things like strength to tackling to tackle breaking to accuracy and all that sort of thing. So we have the kind of the under the hood stuff implemented so that we can add the top layer interaction with that in the future.
Great. That's great news. So what about I noticed that you guys had, I'm not going to call it dynamic weather, but you have the ability to do, rain or clear skies, I'm assuming, and snow. You want to share some information to the listeners about that?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the features that players said they wanted from the 2014 version. Just simple stuff like, hey, would love rain or snow or whatever. And so we actually have four different environmental conditions. Just a clear sky. We've got night games, we've got rain, and we've got snow. So just a couple little things that we've added just to kind of um, add for a little bit of dynamic gameplay.
Cool. So does the snow and rain happen only during the day right now, or is that at night also?
Well, the way we have it implemented, it's foggy and you can't really tell whether it's day or night.
Oh, okay. So you get kind of both.
Yeah.
You get like what do you call that? Like mist or dust or whatever, or dawn, whatever it is. I don't know. The evening before the sun goes down is what I'm trying to say. So cool. So that's cool though. I mean, it's better than just having it clear all the time. At least you get some form of element change. Now, with the snow and the rain, does the gameplay change at all, or is it the same as if it was just clear skies?
We added slight effects on the gameplay. It wasn't something where we wanted to have drastic effects. And I'm not even sure to what extent Madden does that, but we added, it's a little bit more difficult to run when it's snowing. Likewise with catching passes and that sort of thing. Stuff happens just a little bit slower with the environmental changes. So again, just gives players a little bit something to mess with, difference with just playing the same thing over and over again.
Okay. And I'm guessing on defense, we talked a lot about the offense. So on defense, what can you just dive on someone? Do you run into them and automatically you tackle them? How does the defense work?
Sure. So yeah, you can select any player on defense. All the other players will be controlled with AI. Tackling players when you get close enough to them. So let's say you're controlling a player. It's a linebacker blitz. So you select the linebacker and you manually run him where he's supposed to go or where you want him to go. As he gets close enough to the player, he will automatically initiate a tackle. Where he kind of lunges forward and tackles the player, and it's intelligent enough to where they're not going to miss most of the time. But we do have tackle breaking in the game, so if the tackle gets broken, it just won't tackle the player and he'll continue to run by. But tackling is done automatically. It's not something that you have to hit a button to do.
So do you have the ability to intercept the ball at all?
Yes, there are
Okay.
interceptions, there are fumbles. Each player has its own fumble chance, and scrambling with the quarterback will have an increased fumble chance if you're rather than just running with a receiver or whatever. But yeah, and everything is physics based. So, and I guess what I'm trying to say, so if you get in the way of something, so if you're controlling a cornerback and the defending quarterback throws it to him and you undercut the pass, you can absolutely intercept it and run it back. They've have even been weird situations. All the players have colliders on them. And I've had a situation where I've thrown a pass and it hit off a random player's helmet and popped up in the air, and then somebody caught it. And so
Wow.
it's that stuff is in the game, and so it can happen. So there's very dynamic gameplay.
Interesting. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, if you can get the that kind of animations or whatever you want to call it in the game, that's pretty cool. I mean, I think people would enjoy that. So, do you have referees in the game or any kind of even further along, what kind of commentary do you have if any, or is it just gameplay noise and you're just playing and it's very silent right now?
So there are no referees in the game, no penalties. We do have a an in-game announcer who will, and it's the in-game announcer. I'm trying to think the best way to describe it. He intelligently comments on what is happening in the game. So, for example, if you throw an interception, he'll make a comment about the interception. As you run, he'll make comments about it. It's certainly not to the expert level that Madden does, where they've got two people kind of bantering back and forth about what's going on. But there is an in-game announcer, and you can turn him off if you don't like him. But yeah, he it does a good job of kind of officiating or commentating on the game.
Cool, cool. So, I mean, there's more things I'm sure you may want to talk about. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with listeners out there in terms of this game and what you have as part of this version or the future, or anything else you want to talk about in particular?
I'd just like to reiterate that we're in this for the long haul, and this isn't just a single game that we're putting out there and just hope it does well, and then we're kind of done with it and moving on to something else. We're planning on putting a game out each year, and our goal is to add really major features each year that kind of more aligns it with um, games that players are used to playing. And so we want to add franchise mode. One of the things I'm hoping to add as a free update is virtual reality sport for like if you've got an Oculus, you can throw that on there and really get into the quarterback's head. And so what we're really hoping for, and I've mentioned this before, is hoping that we can raise a decent amount of revenue that we can reinvest into this franchise because we're looking at doing this year after year and would really like to get to the point where we're putting out a game that can seriously compete with some of the other ones that are out there.
Cool, cool. So are you, I mean, you're saying year after year, so there's not going to be any microtransactions that you can see. It's not a subscription based thing. It's more like a yearly title.
That's what we're looking at right now. And I mentioned before, we're all ears when it comes to what the community wants. And so if that makes more sense for the community, um, then that's something that we'll take a look at. With the way that sports games typically go, they're very season based. It's this year of football, this year, and then, what are we going to do next year? And so, because the football season is kind of yearly, it makes sense for us to have yearly games. That's at least how we're looking at it. And that also gives us kind of an off season that we can. Um, Really focus on adding improvements to the games. And so that's what we're looking at right now, at least.
Okay, great. Well, it's one of those kind of games that I think people should try. It sounds like it's something that's innovative, and I know you're not trying to compete with the bigger guns out there, or gun, I should say.
Right.
But it is something that I think people can enjoy if you love football and you want to give it a try. I think it's definitely worth trying out. So it's only on PC, just to be clear here.
It's
Uh,
actually on PC, Mac, and Linux. We've got it on all three platforms.
oh, okay. I did not know that. So awesome. So it's going to be on Mac, PC, or Linux. And what about the price point? Do you have a certain price that you're looking at targeting for this game?
Yeah, we've got it priced at 19.99. And if you grab it the first week that it's on Steam, there is a 10% discount.
Okay. And when is it going to release? Because that says on here July 15th, but I think your video says 8/1. I don't know if you noticed that. So I'm not sure when it's going to actually be released.
Yes, so that's a good point. That's something that we need to update. But yeah, we ended up moving the release date up. It is July 15th, so it will release on Steam July 15th. And if you go to the Steam page, you'll see that there. Um, But yeah, you'll be able to get it July 15th.
Great, great. So, I think it's worth a try. It's something that's brand new. The sim community out there is talking about this. I like some of the features that you're showing here. I know you have a lot more work that you're looking to, to add to the product. And I like your logos. I can tell you that. I mean,
Thank you.
it sounds it may sound trivial, but those logos are nice, and it'd be cool to see some gameplay. So maybe if you drop one of those new videos that you were sharing on Facebook with the running animation, I think that that'll help spread the word and give people more of an insight into what they can expect with this game. I hope this interview has brought some new listeners and attracted more people to your product, because I think it deserves a try. So, thank you so much for your time, Danny. We really appreciate it. And check out simheads.com, everybody, if you guys, want to see this interview. And also, go to Steam. I'll put the link in on the Simheads site, and give this game a try. And thanks a lot, Danny, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay, you too.